History in the making.
Each one of you present your art, your work, your performance into this idea of gender equality.
As I got invited to this event, I felt like totally inadequate and was like, man, I'm like not doing enough actually to integrate it into my art. And that I've been aware of, that many people are aware of. So in the art form of rap and the culture of hip hop, it's definitely has a, it's known notoriously not for really promoting gender equality a whole lot, especially in the mainstream version of it, with the lyrics, with who's represented. Most rappers that people know and are familiar with tend to be men. Although there are some great female MCs out there, but the men have taken most of the spotlight, I would say. And also myself, in terms of who I've collaborated with, I was kind of taking stock of that after being invited to this, and most of the other rappers I've collaborated with have been men. Most of the females that I've worked with have done more vocals or melody, which is great. But something that I'm anticipating doing is really striving to seek out more intentionally female rappers in the music that I create. In terms of the actual music that I'm creating, I think something that I'm definitely very mindful of is, again, because in a lot of mainstream hip-hop, and really just mainstream media in general, I think women are very objectified and portrayed in a particular way, and so I really strive to not do that or reinforce that. And anytime I'm talking about women, I really try to come from a more authentic place that is not objectifying. It's normally centered around my relationship with my wife or family. But it's definitely something, I think that I'm honestly inexperienced in and really would strive, and I'm excited actually to see what I can do more in order to contribute in an artistic way.
To me, I speak mostly through the instrument that I play. And I use the instrument as a voice in my art form, as a voice of women and for women. The Native American flute has deep cultural roots, of which I am not a part, but yet, as R.C. Nakai says, the flute is for everyone now. And by playing this instrument and bringing it into the white culture, as much as I do, I am informing people of the value of the cultural roots that we too often ignore in this country, that we are not thinking about, that we are not aware of. Every place that I play, people ask, what is that instrument? Every time I play, it is an educational experience for those who listen. Because of the timbre of the flute and the way that I choose to play it, I feel I bring a female energy to an instrument that is primarily performed on by men. I think that is an important gift to give back to women. I think it is important to integrate culturally with the Native peoples that way. We do healing work at Phoenix Indian Medical Center through the flute and harp. And that's just my goal, is to bring the flute to people through a woman's voice.
So, for me, my music has always been about bringing cultures together, bringing people together. I'd say that fits into gender equality, definitely, because ultimately we are one people, and music and culture in general is a way of communicating that. And so for me, I've always seen music as kind of a universal matrix. I don't see the differentiations of genre and styles and these kinds of things. We tend to separate ourselves from each other more than we need to. And I think part of gender equality is being able to recognize that essential unity amongst all of us that we forget about in all of our titles, whether we be male, female, or however you identify, whatever religion you identify with, political identifications. All these kinds of things are all these mental barriers that we get in the way of just being connected to each other. And so for me, music has been a way of trying to go beyond all those barriers and all those labels and all the things that we make up in our minds, of a way of separating ourselves from each other. Equality is very important, but also ultimately human equality in every way. So I collect instruments from all over the world in a way of trying to bring culture together and create music coming from that place of, I'm not creating one style or one specific type of music, but it's quote-unquote world music, which to me all music is world music. It all comes from the planet. Gender equality is very important. I think it's amazing that it seems like we should be further than we are right now. And I know, like, growing up as a person, I always thought we were already achieved equality, that in school I kind of am taught that, you know, we already went through the oppression and all these kinds of things and we're beyond that, but still, we're still having this conversation and we haven't gone beyond that, obviously. It's just a part of my expression of bringing people together and creating more equality in general.
I dance because it helps me express myself in the beadwork I do. Also expressing myself, it depends on the colors I use and how I feel when I'm making it. And if you feel really good, you know, it comes out the way you want it to. And the dance I do, the women's fancy shawl dance, is actually based off a men's dance that is performed in the powwow. When the men's fancy dance originated, a lot of women felt outraged that if men can do this, so can we. So that's how the beginning of women's fancy dance came, because if men can do it, so can the woman. And I think that's important because a lot of people forget that. You know, whatever men can do, women can also do. And it's mainly how people are raised, what they were taught, that it gets forgotten. And I believe that dance and artistic values bring people to remember how humans are and that we're all equal.
All of you have talked about your specific art, your performances. What barriers do you still encounter? And how have you overcome that personal resistance?
So I play the Aboriginal didgeridoo, which I was talking about with Colby earlier. In the Aboriginal culture, the didgeridoo is traditionally played by men. And I never really got a great answer. Even I have an Aboriginal mentor, we talked about it. And I never really felt like I got a good answer as to why that was, other than that's just the way that they do it. And some of these traditional cultures have things like that where, you know, men and women who can have very specific roles are women who are learning to play didgeridoo. So to me, it's cool to see that kind of pushing beyond this idea that only men can do these certain things, but specifically with the didgeridoo, that more and more today you see women playing, and to me it's great because there's no reason why they shouldn't play.
In high school, I was in JROTC, which is a military class for cadets who are interested in the military future. And for a while, I was very much interested in the military. However, there was moments and a lot of times where when I would get promoted to a higher rank, a lot of the boys in the class felt that I didn't deserve it and that, you know, I wasn't able to become a sergeant because they thought that they were better. And I never really let it bother me because I know that for myself that I earned it. And if, you know, the work is just the work. If you put your mind's heart to it, you're able to get it done. And I just never really let their words get to me. A lot of the drums that you'll hear at powwows are mainly performed by men. However, there are more powwow drum groups that are being sung by women, and that really does create another barrier that's to be broken in the powwow culture, which is also very good.
That is also educating your audience. I think that's so exciting. But one of the things that struck me what you said, Josh, was that at one point you thought, well, we're finished. We have the equality of men and women. If I understood you correctly, yes. Could you elaborate on that? What gave you that impression? Is it because we're in the 21st century?
I mean, just growing up as a child, I think there's a certain kind of naivety, but also I was kind of taught that in my school that, you know, we went through this process of the civil rights, and I think I just grew up in a naive state thinking that we had already transcended all these issues that are still here, and we're always reminded of every day. I don't know if it's something to do with being a kid or this idea that it seems like we should be beyond this at this point, that it's important to have events like this and these kinds of conversations because there's parts of the world that we're not beyond this yet. So yeah, it's just a great reminder, you know, for me.
Yes, I think that's very true, that sometimes we're living in a bubble, especially when everyone believes in these lofty ideas, and then we step outside of the bubble and we find that that reality can be different. Jen, do you have any response to that? Have you had any ideas about the advancement?
As I grab the microphone, yes. And I think my difference in age has a lot to do with that. I was married in 1972. That was the year that Title IX came into being, allowing women to be educated equally to men, and sports came about for women. In 1974, the Equal Credit Act came into being, allowing women to have access to loans. This was not in existence before. This is all in my lifetime. 1993, the National Institute of Health was required governmentally to provide funding for research for women's health, because all of our medical research was based on the male model, and that does not fit our female bodies. My husband in our businesses was being what I thought was a partner with him, and that was 30 years of hard work. When I retired, I left the business. It took 3 people to replace me, so I think I added value. However, when my Social Security earned statement began to come through, all of that value was attributed to my husband's income and to his benefits, and mine were much, much less than that. So it's a learning process, and for me, it's been a learning process that I do have value and worth, and that was not something that was given to me as a young woman in our culture. So now I have grasped that strongly, and part of that is through the instrument that I play. I do have something to say, and I am valuable, and I do.
There was a campaign for smoking cigarettes. During those days of the 20th century, you know, people smoked, and the companies were still hiding the fact that smoking was detrimental to our health. You remember those days? Those of you who were with me? This was really the savvy, cosmopolitan. This is advancement. This is liberation. The special cigarette for women, you know, long and slender. And the publicity would be these very fashionable women, beautiful, elegant. By the way, African American women, Native American women, white American women in these publicity photos. And they were always smoking, happy. And I remember what the text said. You have come a long way, baby. Meaning you got it now, you are educated, you can go out into the workforce, but most of all, you could smoke. You have come a long way. All of us could have this idea, we have really made it, and then some kind of reality hits you. Something happens. The logos, the hashtags that we're all about now, we hear them, that it's the Me Too movement. So we still have the different platforms. We have a long ways to go, but one of those platforms is being the artist.
I think as an artist, just one thing that I've had swirling in my head is, you know, in one of the, I was reading through some of these Baha'i communications that have come out and really kind of elaborated on some of these Baha'i principles of gender equality. And one of the letters I was reading, it was sharing how, as men, it's really our role and responsibility when we do have privilege, or this is what I took away from it, to make sure that we're inviting women into those spaces. That it's not something, and I think it can be tough to navigate, where it's like, well, okay, am I like dominating it now by doing that, or like how do I make sure that it's not like I'm just helping a voice, or what does it look like to invite? And this is something that evolves, and we have to like learn, we have to try, and then maybe we make a mistake, and we have to then reflect and not be afraid. But like for myself, I was just thinking like, okay, you know, I can make the excuse that, oh well, you know, the reason I haven't collaborated with any female rappers is I don't know any. There's not a lot out there. The rappers I know are all men, so you know, it's not my fault. I could you know, take that really easy position and just put it off on someone else. But I think, what am I doing to invite, you know, female rappers into that space? Am I reaching out? Am I saying, hey, is anyone actually interested in learning how to rap, or has anyone like experimented with it? So I think it requires, as men, just my humble view is that it requires a bit more intentionality. And when we know we do have a privilege, or when we know we can invite that female voice into a space that we have privilege into, like taking that step, taking that action, which, again, I don't have a lot of experience, but it's definitely something a lot more on my consciousness after being invited here. So I'm excited to take some action.
For me, too, there's a spiritual dimension to this, and it has to do with the idea that our soul or our spirit is genderless. I personally believe that before we come into our bodies and when we leave the body, our soul or spirit is undifferentiated. And so as a man, I think it's important to be in touch with that feminine aspect within ourselves as well. Because we have that within us. We look masculine, we're men on the outside, but I believe that each gender has the opposite within it. So I believe that we have a feminine side as men, and that the more we're in touch with that feminine side, that female aspect of our soul, the more that we can approach equality and approach and understand what that essence is.
Very beautiful. We want to have this idea of consciousness, awareness. I think all of us have a lot of work to do. We have our own platforms. We may not be artists, but you have some skill, some talent. Even if you read a story to a child, what kind of story is that? Is this a story that's empowering women, boys and girls, giving the idea of the equality of men and women, of the equality of gender, of respect? So we all are capable of this consciousness. Please don't think, oh, I don't have a degree. Oh, I can't play flute or piano, or I don't rap. We can tell stories that empower.
The Dalai Lama speaks that in this age particularly, we have a universal responsibility. Not nation to nation, not man to woman, but life to life, living being to living being. And that is, I think, what our art reflects, and what every life should reflect, is we each bring our own unique energy, whether we are male or female, our own unique weaving into the universal flow. And whether it's that perfect bead in that perfect spot, exactly the right tone, the perfect word at the perfect time, or the perfect note, the way the story is read, the way the cake is baked, the way the car is fixed. It's always about bringing that energy of life into the rest of life and honoring people through that.
Thank you. I would like to read a quote from the Promulgation of Universal Peace. Again, it is well established in history that where woman has not participated in human affairs, the outcomes have never attained a state of completion and perfection. On the other hand, every influential undertaking of the human world has been a participant has attained importance. This is historically true and beyond disproof, even in religion. So I would like for you to still remember that beautiful image of the bird, the wings of the bird, humanity, that we complement each other, and that if that bird has a wing that is broken, humanity cannot fly and advance and attain its full capacity. So I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank you for being here, and I'm sure we will be available after for more commentary and comment.
essentially, just to share a bit of background, I think when we think of the arts and music, we can think of it kind of like a thermometer, but also like a thermostat. And what I mean by that is it can be a reflection of reality. You know, it can kind of give us a pulse on like what is it that society values right now. But also, like a thermometer does, it kind of gives you the temperature. But also, like a thermostat can change the temperature. And as artists, we can also create consciousness. We can inspire new ideas. And so this idea of making a remix album was essentially looking at the things of society and mainstream music that maybe don't sit well. Reading that temperature gauge and then trying to create something that elevates it a little bit. And so this song is a remix song of a song that was #1 on the Billboard charts. This is a song. Again, it's written by my friend Kareem Rushdie, but I'm going to perform it for you because it inspired me to make a very similar project. And it's kind of a take on the objectification of women in the arts. Yeah. Hey. Yo. We talk about equality, we talk about rights, we talk about the innocent and how to help them fight. We talk about love, how it's something we should trust in. We talk about people that are living without justice. We talk a lot about how people can't change. We speak words of unity like we are all the same. We talk about talking and we talk some more. And when the song comes on, what's all the talking for? Hey! Yo, we're looking at girls like objects, as if they don't exist like the Loch Ness. We're looking at sex like a contest. She is not a friend, she's a prospect. Now go and tell that to your mother, and tell her that the girl that you were with was not your lover or a friend or a colleague, you don't even know her name. Tell her if she left you that for you nothing would change. So as I walk home on Richmond Street, it's easy to see conditions of my social reality. All the guys lust for the girls dressed scantily. And as they all walk so tipsy, Baha'u'llah's words just hit me. The people are wandering in the paths of delusion, bereft of discernment to see God with their own eyes. I see people trying to find their path through the lower passions for a chance to be set free. But evidently that just cannot be, because any pleasure of the body is temporary. Hey! Yeah, check it. Women are shy and submissive, gifted with housework, and definitely good at cooking. And on the whole, they're actually pretty good looking. Good at shopping and stopping for coffee and gossiping, talking about what they're impressed with, / what men are blessed with, physically. You see, most think this is a woman's nature intrinsically. Yo. But women have been living with what they've been given, driven mad by man's decisions, incision, gripping positions, slipping to make conditions bad. Oppression that makes my heart sad, because I see inside me that women are brave and able, more emotionally stable, resourceful, even more so than men. Women will be the cause of peace, my friend. Hey! Here we go, you ready? When I say gender, you say equality. Gender, gender. When I say two, you say wings. Two. When I say less, you say fly. Less. When I say gender, you say equality. Gender, gender. Okay. Yeah, Bobby had a little bit if you like this beat. Okay. Questions first. What do we need to heal the world? What's inside a pure heart? When I'm down, what do I need? What'll set your soul free? Yeah, nothing but love. That's right, nothing but love. Yo, what a power. The most wonderful. Brings joy to the sorrowful. Brings hope to the hopeless. Life to the lifeless. The message that we got don't need a watch. Timeless. Let your soul take off, we the pilots. Rep the Southwest, but we're flying united. So just vibe with this, get hyped to this. Destination, flight to bliss. Love lights up the cold heart. So warm it up, shine your lamps like you're really
heart ain't nothing but love. I got nothing but love. Yo, let me see those smiles. I wanna see everyone soaring up above. We got nothing but love, so let's share some instead of everybody being so scared of you and me or him and her. Let's get outside, get it right, and get united like we're supposed to be in the community. I'm here for you, you're here for me, almost like we're family. Nothing better than that. Hey, Hannah Maynard was an educator, now he's passing it on, feeling nothing but love. All the hatred's gone, just like the fog. Yeah, poof, it's gone. Last time, real loud, nothing but love. Hey, thank you so much, everyone.
Day. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day.